This is a net decked Niv Mizzet Supreme deck because I've learned that I thought playing a fully interactive Niv deck, Reborn deck, was the optimal way to play that version of Niv, but it turns out that's how you've got to play in Historic Brawl, I'm afraid. It's literally the fact if you don't kill their stuff immediately, you just get run over. It's basically like old school Commander games where nobody did anything until someone just went, I've won. So we're going to try this deck, which is way more interactive. You see here we got way more 1-mana spells that will just screw with opponents. I'll link the deck list in the description below, and we'll just see how this does, because my other recording for the decks I've been testing were terrible. Alright, we got our first match here with MTG Player 86. They're playing Arga of the Freezing Flame. We're going to mulligan here. This hand is not placeable. Neither is this one. Again, we don't have black or blue. This hand is acceptable. We have all 5 colours. We'll get rid of Snakeskin Veil. We'll drop a Triumph. Our opponent's going to drop a Cold Steel Heart. So we'll drop a Temple Garden and Thoughtseize. Check their hand. The only thing we care about is the counter spell, because it could enter the Niv. This is by nature a heavy burn deck, so Niv monocolor protection is practically indestructible hexproof on this match. After some consideration, as our opponent checks their hand, they drop a Temple of Epiphany, fire down a Celestus. We draw a Growth Spiral, so we'll just play a land, pass back. It becomes nighttime. They loot and discard their Guardian Idol. They play Riptide Laboratory and cast their commander, Arga. So in response, we will Growth Spiral. Mana Confluence is great here. We'll play our Birchwood Pathway and fire off our Niv Mizzet Supreme, hoping that that last spell is not a counter spell. It enters the battlefield and our opponent starts to read what our commander does several times during this next turn, realizing none of their burn spells are going to work here. They play a Forsaken Crossroad. And read Niv Mizzet again, realizing the burn spell they're holding in their hand can't do anything to him. They don't attack and pass back to us. We'll deploy our Arcane Signet. And then we can use Thrilling Discovery here. Since all these spells can be jump started, we'll just get rid of 2 that we're not going to cast twice. We draw some good spells here. Justice Strike and Eureka Moment are very solid. It's again daytime. Our opponent just passes back to us here. They're clearly wanting to use some burn, but they can't, so we'll throw away Time Wipe because we are not going to bounce our Niv unless the situation changes drastically. It becomes nighttime again, we'll play a Command Tower. With the mana we have here, we're just going to punch in with Niv here. It's a close race here, but if we can kill their commander at least once, we'll be pretty sorted. So we'll wait till their turn. They have a lot of things active. They could probably activate the Storm Giants, but they're just going to go for the attack here. So we'll deploy a Justice Strike in response. In response, they go for a dive down. We'll use Bind to Secrecy. In response to our Bind to Secrecy, they cast the Wizard's Retort. However, we can just jumpstart the Bind to Secrecy again to counter their spell, discarding the Rushed Rebirth. So in response, they activate Riptide Laboratory, returning it to its hand. We have 5 cards, so we're going to grab the Obsessive Stitcher. We probably won't play it, but what we can do is use this as a jumpstart fuel. Your purpose is just to be discarded. We'll just go straight to combat, hit in. They're going to start gaining life from the Celestus, but if we can just force them every turn to not play their commander or bounce it every turn, will be great. Eureka Moment draws us 2 cards. We get a Strike It Rich and a Pathway. Striker Witch is another card I'm enjoying here because we can use it as an emergency jump start and then we can flash it back in the graveyard. I do need to probably make a version of this deck in paper for fun. Here you go, the Freezing Flame returns to the battlefield. So in response, we'll just use our Argus Spree from hand. Our opponent will then have to use their Riptide Laboratory, bounce it back to hand. We pass the turn, we now draw a Absorb, which is fantastic. We swing in, put him down to 14. Celestus triggers again. I love how big our graveyard is here, it's absolutely great. While we wait for our opponent to replay Arga, I will say I had one good match in this set, which is why I always struggle with Historic Brawl. Since Niv Mizzet Reborn is in the Hell queue, we literally just get like the worst matchups ever. We can't play anything brood or fun. Alright, Arga comes down, we hit Absorb. But then we have things like this where we play random decks, which are pretty cool, but it always feels very one-sided. Arga goes to their command zone here. We pass to us, we'll go to combat, attack with Supreme. They put them down to 10. On their turn, they play a land. They tap their Hollow Storm Giant for mana and flash out Phyrix, the Sundered Storm. We're going to jumpstart our Absorb here to counter it, throwing away the Strike It Rich. And then in frustration they Lightning Bolt our face and concede. That was probably the best match we recorded, because you'll see here we have up against an opponent Strider playing Tom Bombadil, so I'm like 5 colours. This is great. Opening hand has some good answers, some good interaction, and we have most of our colours, which is, you know, perfect for us. We actually have all 5 of our colours. So our opponent goes first, playing a Steam Vents. We're going to shock in a Watery Grave here and Thoughtseize them. And we were going to take their Arcane Signet, and in response to us taking their Arcane Signet, they just concede the match. Yeah, this is pretty standard apparently for non-Hell queue matches. So we go here against Galadriel or Lofthaven, and we play a Trial. We have an Absorb in hand here, so this is perfect. So what we can do is we can go Fort Erasure. There's plenty of paths here we could take. So first thing I'm going to do is shock in this Hallowed Fountain and Thoughtseize our opponent. Fort Erasure, sorry. Looking at their hand, there's some pretty decent things. I'm going to take Eyes Everywhere, the enchantment, because all their bounce spells and Frogify effects don't work on our Niv. Blue-black land, we have black and we have blue, so we'll just Fort Erasure that away with Surveil. They play an island. In response, we will just shock in a Steam Vents to hold up our Absorb here if they try to drop a Galadriel on turn 3. They play a Forest. They go for their commander, so we'll absorb that. They put it back in the command zone for 5. We play a Pathway here on black. Then we play the Celestus. And now we can Wither Bloom command. Now normally I would mill my opponent to get back my land, but because of our commander's ability, I have a second consideration and realise I'm playing the Jumpstart commander, so let's mill ourselves for free, drain our opponent for 2. We put a Veto, a Saheeli and a Snakeskin's Veil in the graveyard. So not the greatest. Wait for our opponent. They play a land. And they play the Oracle of the Alpha, putting the Power 9 into their deck. In response to that, we are going to... I consider what my options are here. Play our Pathway on blue. Play our Niv Mizzet Supreme. We get our Jumpstart cards back, so we now have answers to everything they could play. They play a land here. And I think they realise, because they do the same check that other players do, they're reading Niv and realising none of their spells actually answer their Niv. and they concede. So hexproof and monocolored is apparently one of the best things you can do in Historic Brawl. We have a Smeagol here. This hand is not really that passable because I would love to play the Curse of Silence here, but Plaza of Heroes won't have a legendary. I don't have many of those, so we'll mulligan. This hand is slightly better. We don't have blue, so we're drawing for a blue here, but we can rip apart anything that could be a danger to us. They get a turn 1 Mox Amber. We play our Trio. They play a Swamp. We play our Rafine's Tower, so it's blue. We have full domain now. Actually, no, we don't. Sorry, we need green. We've got 4 domain. I need to learn these things. They get up to 3 mana and immediately cast a Smeagol. I think they must have a protection spell on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Rip Apart here on the Smeagol. But they don't have protection, so I'm surprised. They put it back to the command zone. We will play our next Trio. Our opponent draws a card. Plays the command tower. Realizes the Amber doesn't tap without their commander on the field. And they ultimately concede. So yeah, that's it. If you apparently want a strong, powerful deck, play Niv Mizzet Supreme. Apparently hexproof and monocolored is unbeatable.